The Caucasus Mountains and the region in which they lie are sort of a bridge between Europe and Asia, and lies between Russia, Iran, and Turkey. Within the region live Armenians, Georgians, North and South Ossetians, Cherkashians, Azerbaijanis or Azeris, Chechens, Dagestanis, Kurds, and many other different ethnic and tribal groups. These groups have had a tough time living near one another throughout history. War, clan feuds, and ethnic cleansing have taken place many times throughout history. One of the longest times of relative peace was when the Soviet Union, or USSR, dominated the entire region and kept the people of the Caucasus away from each other's throats through fear and force. When the Soviet Union fell in 1991, many of the old ethnic and religious hatreds boiled over once again, especially between Armenia and Azerbaijan. In the fall of 2023, with the world already on edge because of the fighting in Ukraine and the Gaza Strip, the government of Azerbaijan, which has been spending increasing amounts of money on modern weapons in the last few years, moved into the region of Nagorno-Karabakh, one of the most peculiarly and dangerously located places in the world. The armed forces of Azerbaijan, following the order of its leader President Ilham Aliyev, moved into the region and ordered most people in it to leave. No one was sure what would happen if they stayed, but most people did not wait to find out. An estimated 100,000 people grabbed what belongings they could carry and fled. These people were Armenian, and Armenians had been living in Nagorno-Karabakh for centuries. But the story is not as clear-cut as it might seem. Welcome to a day in history. Today, the tragic story of Nagorno-Karabakh. Even today, Josef Stalin is making people miserable. 100 years ago, he was the People's Commissar for Nationalities in the Soviet Union, just one of the many positions he held on his way to the top of the Soviet hierarchy. Stalin did not have an easy job because the new Union of Soviet Socialist Republics was a group of smaller ethnic, cultural, and religious groups. Often, these groups were bitter historical enemies. Two were the Azerbaijan Soviet Socialist Republic and the Armenian Soviet Socialist Republic. Despite what most people think, Stalin would listen to the opinion of others, especially in the early years of the USSR, and he listened to leaders from both Armenia and Azerbaijan. Then he made his decision, and that was that. Even that early in his career, no one was going against Stalin, at least not anyone from regions that could fit inside Russia thousands of times over. Azerbaijan and Armenia sit side by side towards the southern end of the Caucasus. The Armenians are among the oldest Christian groups in the world. Christianity had been spreading in Armenia since the 1st century AD, and in 301 AD, King Tiridates III declared Christianity the official state religion, the very first Christian kingdom on earth. The Azerbaijanis are Muslim. From 700 through the early 1300s, Islam gradually became the dominant religion in Azerbaijan. Within what became the Azerbaijan Soviet Socialist Republic is the enclave of Nagorno-Karabakh, which measures about 50 miles from north to south and 30 from east to west. Before 2020, when the Armenians found themselves on the losing end of yet another war against the Azerbaijanis, between 85 to 90% of the people in the region were Armenians. The rest of the population were mainly Azeris, living in the territories north and east. About 1 to 3% of the population were Russians, Kurds, and ethnic Greeks. This is where Nagorno-Karabakh is located. As you can see, Nagorno-Karabakh lies totally inside the borders of Azerbaijan. Another region, Nakhchivan, lies on the far western side of Armenia. It's part of Azerbaijan, but is separated from the rest of the country by Armenia. It's likely to be a trouble spot soon as well. When Stalin gave Nagorno-Karabakh to Azerbaijan, he created heated resentments in Armenia that simmered for 7 decades. Armenians had lived in the region since before anyone could remember, and it was always regarded as Armenian. But by 1923, most of the surrounding area, including that between Armenia and the enclave, was Azerbaijani, and had been for centuries. Maybe Stalin thought he was doing the right thing. Perhaps he figured that the Soviet Union would last forever. He was wrong. In 1988, as the Soviet Union began to unravel, tensions simmered beneath the surface, punctuated by whispers of self-determination that grew louder with the Soviet Union's waning breath. In 1988, the simmering pot boiled over. Karabakh Armenians demanded unification with Armenia, igniting a war that raged for 6 bloody years. Villages became battlegrounds, families were torn apart, and the region became a no-man's land of shattered homes and fractured communities. Both sides committed atrocities. Prisoners were tortured and executed, women and girls were assaulted, and villages were destroyed. Russia has almost always been an ally of sorts to Armenia. They are both Christian, and for centuries, and generally share an anti-Muslim outlook. The Azeris looked to the Ottoman Empire and then Turkey as an ally. In the 1990s, Russia, in particular, was concerned that Iran and Turkey, both Muslim countries, would extend their influence into the Caucasus region, which sits upon some of the richest oil fields in the world. So they sent weapons and troops to help the Azerbaijanis. On February 26, 1994, Armenian forces, along with elements of the Russian 366th Guards Motor Rifle Regiment, advanced into the Azeri village of Khojaly, in the western part of Nagorno-Karabakh. There, they ran amok. Estimates of the civilians tortured, mutilated, and killed by the Armenians and Russians run from 500 to 1,000. By 1994, a fragile ceasefire emerged, with Armenia and the self-proclaimed Republic of Artsakh holding Nagorno-Karabakh and 7 surrounding Azerbaijani districts. The war continued on and off until 1994, when a tenuous peace settlement was agreed upon. For over 2 decades, a precarious peace held sway. Scars healed, children played amid ruined walls, and hope tentatively bloomed. Yet, beneath the surface, the embers of conflict smoldered. Azerbaijan, fueled by oil wealth and nationalist fervor, never relinquished its claim on lost territory. Skirmishes flared intermittently, casting ominous shadows across the fragile truce. In 2020, the flames erupted once more. A full-scale war ignited, unleashing drones and artillery upon Karabakh's ancient churches and war-weary towns. This time, however, the tide turned. With Turkish backing, Azerbaijan made swift territorial gains, reclaiming much of what it had lost. A ceasefire brokered by Russia silenced the guns, but the human cost was staggering. Thousands lay dead, cities lay in ruins, and a new diaspora of Armenian refugees poured into their ancestral homeland, Armenia. When yet another peace was brokered, about 85% of the Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh had fled to Armenia or overseas. Most of those who remained lived in the regional capital, Stepanakert, Khakendi in Azeri. The remaining majority Armenian territory was called the Republic of Artsakh and was only connected to Armenia by a narrow strip of land kept open by the Russian military. From 2020 to 2023, the Azeris continued an unprecedented military buildup, and the language they used to describe what they were going to do to the remaining Armenian population when they had a chance alarmed the world. In the days leading up to the Azerbaijani offensive, which began in late September 2023, the Azerbaijani political and military leadership sought to calm world opinion, which had become increasingly concerned that a violent ethnic cleansing operation was about to take place. Knowing that it was likely that foreign interference might halt their plans should widespread ethnic violence occur, President Aliyev called his invasion of Nagorno-Karabakh a reintegration of the territory into his country. Knowing the history of the two people and that language often masks intentions, many Armenians began to flee. Those who were caught in Stepanakert and other remaining Armenian settlements were told they could stay, but it was strongly suggested that they leave. For about 2 weeks, over 150,000 Armenians fled the region, mostly on foot, carrying what belongings they could with them and essentially ending centuries of Armenian culture in Nagorno-Karabakh. Armenia's traditional ally Russia has been focused on its war in Ukraine and its tremendous losses in men and equipment. In the short time since their expulsion, the Armenians have begun to buy more and more advanced weapons, mainly from France. In 2020, the Armenians found themselves outgunned by the Azeris, who made great use of armed drones 2 years before the Russian invasion of Ukraine. They have vowed to modernize their army rapidly, and in a mirror image of Nagorno-Karabakh, small enclaves of Azeris live within the borders of Armenia. Most political and military analysts believe this conflict is far from over. Why would it be? It's been going on for centuries. This is A Day in History. Thank you for watching today.